Lady Justice, inviting all of the people out on an adventure. Let's go see what we can find. Who's in? Hey. What does the pursuit of happiness actually look like in practice? Out there in the constitutional cruiser, it's all about hitting the open road. Yesterday, we put together a short explainer video connecting the dots between our everyday freedoms and our adventure of traveling from sea to shining sea. It's an invitation to learn, explore, and unite together. Watch this quick breakdown and let's go see what we can find. Hashtag who's in?
Welcome to this explainer. So today we are unpacking a really fascinating legal mystery. I mean, we take it completely for granted that we can just pack our bags, hop in our cars, and cross state lines, maybe just to avoid our own state's DMV, right? Without ever having to stop at some internal border checkpoint. But where does our fundamental freedom to actually hit the open road originate? Well, the legal bedrock for this freedom is incredibly hidden. It's honestly this brilliant piece of legal architecture that you use every single day without even realizing it. So where does your right to move freely across this country actually come from? Look, most of us know that famous phrase, the pursuit of happiness. It's totally etched into the American consciousness. But if you actually sit down and search the text of the U.S. Constitution or the Bill of Rights line by line, you won't find those exact words anywhere. No way. Nor will you find a specific, explicit clause that spells out the right to travel. And yet, freedom of movement is undeniably one of our most foundational liberties. Today, we're breaking down how our founding documents and Supreme Court precedent actually protect your right to hit the open road. Section 1. Philosophy versus the legal framework. Okay, let's dive right into this, because this freedom of movement evolved in a few distinct stages. It all kicked off back in 1776 when Thomas Jefferson laid down the philosophical groundwork in the Declaration of Independence. Then, 11 years later in 1787, the U.S. Constitution was drafted, essentially building the actual legal machinery to protect that philosophy. And stretching right into the modern era, the Supreme Court has repeatedly affirmed these precedents whenever they were challenged by, overreaching state laws.
Now, what's really interesting is the profound contrast between these two foundational documents. Back in 1776, Jefferson penned life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as an unalienable truth, meaning it's quite literally the very reason governments are instituted in the first place. But fast forward to 1787 in the U.S. Constitution, and this broad philosophical principle was codified under the much more enforceable umbrella of liberty. So the philosophical goal of the Declaration absolutely requires the legal space provided by the Constitution to actually mean anything in practice.
Because, think about it, liberty is not static. It inherently requires space and motion. Without the freedom of movement, the pursuit of happiness basically becomes an empty phrase. The founders of this country deeply understood a critical truth. If a government possesses the power to arbitrarily restrict your movement without due process, well, it effectively controls everything else in your life. It controls your ability to commute to work, to associate with whoever you choose, to speak freely in different forums, and ultimately, it controls your destiny.
Section 2. The constitutional anchors.
So if the precise words right to travel aren't explicitly written in the text, where exactly is this unwritten right legally anchored? Well, the first major structural limit on government authority regarding your travel is found in Article 4, Section 2, the Privileges and Immunities Clause. This guarantees that citizens of each state are entitled to all privileges and immunities across state lines. Practically speaking, it prevents states from treating out-of-state travelers as foreigners. If you drive from Nevada to California, California can't suddenly strip you of your basic rights or demand to see a passport just because you crossed their invisible state line.
Next up, we have the incredibly powerful due process clauses, which you'll find in the 5th and 14th Amendments. These critical amendments state that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Notice that word liberty again. The Supreme Court has repeatedly affirmed over the centuries that liberty, in this context, inherently includes the right to move, to reside, and to travel across state lines without arbitrary government interference. Your movement is fundamentally protected property of your person. And this brilliantly illustrates how these distinct constitutional pieces interlock to create a bulletproof shield for your transit. Article 4, Section 2 ensures equal protection between states. The 5th and 14th Amendments protect your liberty to move via due process. The 14th Amendment, specifically through its Privileges or Immunities Clause, guarantees a national citizenship right to pass borders freely. And finally, the 9th Amendment protects non-enumerated rights. So the right to travel doesn't just live in one isolated sentence, it is literally woven into the very fabric of the Constitution.
Let's actually focus on the 9th Amendment for a second, because it is an absolute game changer. It says that just because a specific right isn't named in the Bill of Rights doesn't mean the people don't possess it. To the founders, the freedom of movement was so overwhelmingly self-evident that explicitly listing it just wasn't deemed necessary. It was as obvious as the right to breathe. This amendment is the ultimate constitutional reminder that this is a bedrock right retained by you, not some privilege granted to you by the state.
Section 3. Real-world legal precedents. Understanding the historical text is one thing, right? But how does this actually play out on the ground? Throughout American history, our judicial system has had to step in when states overstep their constitutional bounds. Two monumental Supreme Court rulings give absolute legal authority to this unwritten right, Crandall v. Nevada and Sands v. Roe. In these landmark cases, the court firmly confirmed that national citizenship carries an inherent right to cross state borders freely. This makes it explicitly clear that your right to travel is a non-negotiable aspect of your national citizenship, and it completely supersedes the whims of individual state legislatures.
So, why does knowing all these legal distinctions actually matter to you? Well, first, your travel is tied directly to your constitutional liberty. Second, every single interstate trip you take, whether it's an epic family vacation or just a mundane commute across a state line, is a practical, ground-level exercise of your constitutional rights. Third, exercising your freedom responsibly keeps those rights active. You don't want to let them just gather dust as theoretical concepts in some old law book. And finally, staying continually educated about this framework ensures those rights endure for the next generation.
Section 4. The Civic Call.
So, the crucial point here is that this information isn't just constitutional trivia for a history test. It's a profound call regarding how we interact with our own liberties in our daily lives. The pursuit of happiness isn't something magically granted by decree. It's an active pursuit, heavily protected by structural limits deliberately placed on government authority. Knowledge truly is power. Understanding the legal roots of your freedom of movement, knowing that it relies on the Privileges and Immunities Clause, due process, and the 9th Amendment is literally the very first and most important step in preserving it against any future overreach. Which leaves us with one final provocative thought. Knowing your right to travel is structurally anchored across the Constitution. How will you actively exercise and protect your fundamental liberties on your next road trip? Stand strong, stay informed on the exact source of your rights, and keep pursuing what lies ahead on the open road. Keep learning, keep exploring, and we'll catch you in the next Explainer.
Have you heard the word? ThePoliceRecord.com/invite/LJLP. Get you some discountage over there at ThePoliceRecord.com. Hope to see you there.